Welcome to Clocking In, Voices of NC Manufacturing. I'm your host, Phil Mintz, Director of the North Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, otherwise known as NCMEP. My role is to drive outreach to NC manufacturers, build relationships to federal and state leaders, and coordinate efforts to drive profitable manufacturing growth in North Carolina. Throughout my time working closely with manufacturers, I have heard the most quirky, curious, and memorable stories. I wanted to turn these stories into a podcast so that others may hear and be informed and inspired. From humble beginnings to manufacturing titans, from tragedy to triumph, I will be interviewing some of these manufacturers who have made North Carolina manufacturing the powerhouse that it is today. The U.S. currently produces about 4% of the world's printed circuit boards. This means that the vast majority, around 96%, are manufactured outside of the U.S. The U.S.'s share of PCB production has significantly decreased over time, dropping from 30% about 25 years ago. So it makes it more fascinating that from its facility in High Point, the I2E Group provides turnkey design, development, and production of printed circuit board, electromechanical, cable, and harness assemblies. The company has the expertise to meet the engineering need of their customers in several different markets, including commercial, industrial, medical, wireless, telecommunications, test, measurement, power distribution, aerospace, defense, and automotive. Now that's quite a lot. So John Weir is here. He is the founder and CEO of the I2E Group. Since 1993, John has maintained domestic operations in the PCB manufacturing industry, and his work continues today. So John, glad you could take your time out. How are you doing today?
Great, Phil. Good to catch up with you.
You know, we go back a long ways, but I'm also curious about how did you get involved in this? What made you want to get going in the printed circuit board industry? And, you know, let's talk about how you navigated that over time.
Sure. Well, I was working for Hatteras Yachts, division of AMF in High Point. That's where they were headquarters. And I kept working with the owners of these yachts, and they were generally entrepreneurs. And they, were self-made. And I said, well, I'm never going to buy a yacht if I just sit here on the other side of the desk. I've got to become one of them. Now, my father actually had started his own automotive electrical business in Florida, and I had worked there in the summers and actually a year off after high school before going to college. So I knew something about, electronics. I knew something about starting business, knew the hard work, but also the rewards. So really what was happening is IBM and Wang were both laying off tens of thousands of employees in 1993, 91 to 92 when I was looking at this venture. And I said, well, there's still a need for PCs. There's still a need for electronics. What is the solution? So they started the outsourcing trend at that point. And at that point, they would literally package up the entire order and put it on a pallet and ship it to a company that would literally just add the labor and then return it. So I reasoned with my MBA that I could do it better. I could not only add the labor, but get involved in the parts procurement. And really, majority of the cost is, in fact, parts. It's parts, and parts, just like real estate is location, location, location. So it became really a logistics company. Now, we are very sophisticated and have X-ray equipment. We have microscopic soldering techniques and robotic assembly equipment. But really, it's bringing all the parts from all over the world together and then putting that in a finished product. So, the expertise that I brought was from some project management, manufacturing operations, OR/IE, and combine it with the love, if you will, of building electronics. And right from the beginning, there was a demand. One of our first customers at that time was company Grayson Electronics, which was actually supplying to the wireless business, became Harris, and now L3 Harris. And these were calibration instruments for emergency vehicle two-way communications, right? So that came to me because I did a press release and said, here's the company I'm starting. Does anybody know an opportunity? And true to that, 2 degrees of freedom. Or connection, actually. Somebody said, come on. And, I was just going to do an informational interview, and I walked out of there with an RFQ. And it was a good fit. And then we had a local company, which was in the injection molding business. So this is 94. And they were supplying to IBM the cash register drawers. And they needed the product that actually opens a cash register drawer. It's a little circuit board assembly. So we became an IBM supplier through an injection molding company. And again, they were right there in High Point. So this really was a local, base business servicing basically customers in 2.5, 3 hour drive. And then we just continue to grow. We had a company that started an LED bus sign company in Durham. That might ring a bell to you. And again, what we allow in our business is our customers to focus on their core, which is typically the customer-facing interaction, right? What is really needed in the marketplace, and we're executing behind the scenes. So the execution could be a circuit board assembly, and we literally build it just like our customer tells us to, or we can start very early on as somebody has an idea and they want to create a product, and then we do the full execution behind the scenes.
But there's a reason why only 4% of this work is being done here in the States.
Well, it's true. So we had a long run with IBM. We kept lowering cost. Our quality was, 99.9. We were Six Sigma, delivering weekly to their integration facility up in Emporia, Virginia. And they just called us up and said, we're moving the business to Malaysia. And we said, well, wait, what did we do? I probably had 35 people dedicated by that time for purchasing, quality, and actually manufacturing. They said, oh, well, you haven't done anything wrong. We're just taking your business and combining it with some business that's in a company manufactured up in Minnesota, and I think Texas was the other. So it was this, drive to make transaction costs or unit costs the lowest possible, right? Not recognizing the extreme extra cost of managing that offshore relationship. And, this was a fairly simple product. And so it was not quite a commodity, but that's really, when you cite those statistics, which were, daunting, if you will, that a lot of that is consumer. Okay. A lot of it is, or simple products. Now, we have been able to grow our business domestically because we protect our customers' intellectual property. If we're in the medical industry, quality and FDA compliance and certificate of conformance audits are all super important. So that's really where we've been able to maintain our niche. That applies to aerospace, DOD, and UL products. So going into gas pumps, GoBarco actually is an end customer of one of our products, and they can't rely on something that might work or that was put together in maybe a less than quality manner, because they got to protect thousands of dollars of equipment, plus potentially what could be a real catastrophe if a gas pump failed because it had an electrical surge.
Obviously, at this time where we're talking about doing more domestic manufacturing, this is probably music to your ears, I would think, especially in this type of area where we have tons of stuff being imported. What is your thoughts on how you might continue to build your business in this area during this time?
Well, yes, you're right. It is. They're singing essentially the same song that we've sung for, decades. Is we can do a better job of responsiveness and shorter lead times. Obviously, more complex a product is a better fit for us because what I call it is a high contact sport. The engineers are dealing with us, the purchasing agents are dealing with us, the quality managers are dealing with us. And, instead of getting on a Teams call or whatever, we're literally going to our customers' location physically, or we're dealing with, in a real time, not let's try to figure this out over days or weeks, because there's this independent location for everybody having to come together. So what I do see, though, is the challenge for parts procurement. while the manufacturing assembly activities, is our focus, we still have to get the raw components, the resistors, the transformers, the connectors, and most of that has gone offshore. So it's a real challenge to try to figure out that supply chain. What is going to literally come back to the U.S.? Now, part of what happened, and it's not just in our industry, is you had, factories being set up, let's call it offshore. They were using latest in automation techniques, whereas the factories that were already here that had been built in the 60s or 70s, were using non-automated technology. So I think what we're going to see, and particularly, in DOD, it's got that whole supply chain has to be made in the U.S. So there is going to be some return of that raw component or base component manufacturing here, as well as helping companies like ours, which you might call the integrators, grow here domestically.
Yeah, but that's a kind of a difficult thing, I guess, in some areas, because you got piece parts that's just cents, right? It doesn't cost hardly anything.
Cents. Yes, correct.
And being able to scale that in a way that's advantageous for a domestic company is probably a big challenge.
What we're hoping for, too, is that there'll be a flow down from the CHIPS Act. Okay, so the CHIPS Act is focused on semiconductors, the chip itself. But that chip doesn't do anything unless it's attached on a circuit board assembly that we build to produce an end result. So we're hoping that there will be a realization that, that money has to flow down, the grants, the subsidies, the support of the organizations like your organization, to make it a whole ecosystem. Because if you're just focused on chip production, that's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
You've got to have that whole vertical, from the chip, if you will, which is the most base level, all the way up to the product that actually, performs the final and activity.
Yeah, well, John, just shifting gears a little bit, there's always a lot to learn by the name of a company. And so your business is called I2E. What does that tell us?
Well, so the first company in this space was Nimbus Technologies that I started in 1993, and that came about because I saw that while think of Nimbus Cloud is your thunder cloud, if you will, and people could be, concerned about that, but that's where you get basic electricity, static electricity, and then from rain comes growth. So there was a good connection, and obviously a high tech.
That's pretty deep there.
Now, I'll laugh with you because at the same time, our family had a German Shepherd the dog's name was Nimbus. And so the people that really knew me said, "Oh, forget all that deep stuff. You just named it after your family's dog." But no, it was really the former. So, but we were really contract manufacturing. We were just putting A and B together to equal C. So I saw, though, the demand for the ideation to start earlier, coming up with the product idea, the what and the why, taking it through the development cycle, prototyping, contract manufacturing, then the MRO, the reverse logistics. So I2E is that innovation. The I stands for innovation, so that's early stage. 2, execution, which is your manufacturing and your supply to the end product. So the way we have it in a flow chart, we start it's in a early concept stage, all the way through to what we call the bullseye, which is a commercialization. And now for some customers, we do literally from beginning to end. Some will just do elements of that. And contract manufacturing is one of those elements, but we like to do a full wraparound service, around the product. And really, it's more than their product. What we try to do is work with our customers on a venture approach. So we're designing maybe a product that has a platform technology. So you could build a model 100, 200, 300, 400, or you could build one that has remote diagnostic capabilities. Maybe that's your model 400, has that more sophisticated feature set, but the model 100 is just your base, starting point.
So I walked to your factory, and I mean, you make the printed circuit boards, and you have the machines for that. But it's not just printed circuit boards. You expand a little bit beyond that as well, right?
Well, it goes back to my background is actually in mechanical and electrical engineering, and as I said, the MBA. So we look for, in particular cases, we'll do what would be called the same process for many different customers. So our robotic assembly equipment for the surface mount circuit board assembly, we will have medical products run through that line. We'll have wireless products. We'll have diagnostic equipment. We'll have industrial controls, and then we also have work cells where we have dedicated work area for a particular customer. And that example is we're building a complete control panel for the solar energy industry, and you have your inverters that are out at a solar collector farm, if you will, that we see, out in the countryside mainly, or maybe on top of roofs. Well, that's DC power. That power has to be inverted to AC so that we can all use it. So that inverter is massive. It's literally comes in on the semi-trailer. And so we build is the controller that monitors the temperature, the fluid levels, the fans, and keeps this whole system operating so that the little DC can be inverted to the AC. So it's got metals, plastics, wire and cable harnesses, in addition to the circuit board.
Yeah, so quite a bit of capability you have there. We're speaking with John Weir, who is the founder and CEO of I2E Group right here in High Point, North Carolina. But we're not in High Point today, but he is in the Triad area. At the beginning of this, John, I rattled off several markets and industries, and it just seems like there's opportunities for you pretty much in any market.
Well, fortunately, that's both that cuts both ways, if you will. I'll get excited about, a new product being developed maybe out of Wake Forest Innovation Quarter, right? Because of the medical, and we'll help them take it to a certain level, and then we're really got a big focus. Obviously, aerospace and aviation is huge for the Triad, and we've just recently been awarded our first contract with a major aircraft manufacturer here in the Triad, and that's very exciting because I'm actually a pilot, and my dad was an A&P, so I go way back in terms of understanding aviation products. And so we're trying to narrow that down. So we're really trying to be core in 4 areas: the medical, the wireless, the aviation, and aerospace, DoD, and then industrial controls. So we're focusing our internal workforce so that it's directed in each of these, because there is some uniqueness, right? Buying a medically certified, let's say, switch is different than one that might be used in the industrial controls. So we do have some specialization, and we're trying to become really good at, again, 4 key areas.
All right, so the challenge for you is managing your growth, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Good people, and I got to put a plug in for this conference. There was an EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System seminar yesterday that really highlighted some ways to engage your employees, at the system level, right? They have the technical competence, but being able to engage them in the whole, business solution, if you will, and picked up some great pointers there. And of course, this morning was about AI. We're using AI, but just nipping at it. We see it huge opportunities to, again, leverage our existing workforce to grow, while adding to the numbers of people. It's being more effective and efficient with the people that we have and that we add in the future.
All right. So from your foundations at Hatteras Yachts, you decided to buy a plane instead, right? You're a pilot?
A pilot. That actually goes back even in high school. I learned to fly a glider when I was still in high school. But, I do love boating. I do love of flying. We were talking last night. Somebody said, "Well, do you golf?" I said, "I don't have time for golf."
Yeah, you're bigger things than that.
But it's technology. It'll be wild if some of our VTOL air taxis actually occur in our lifetime. We have a focus here out of Smith Reynolds, on advanced air mobility. So we're really excited about some of those opportunities, that are out in the future. So I think we're all in for a great run. And I say if we stay focused, in manufacturing, executing, on not just ideas that are created, but actually, creating products. This area is primed, and it has had a great success story, and that's really why we're still here, because this is a hotbed of making things.
All right, we've been talking with John Weir. He's the founder and CEO of I2E Group. John, we appreciate your time today and hearing about your business that's really, really growing right here in High Point. We're not in High Point, though.
Well, thank you, and appreciate your interest. And to all those who are thinking of starting their own company, just take that first step.
And use AI. Thank you for joining today's Clocking In, Voices of NC Manufacturing. This podcast is brought to you by NC State's College of Engineering, the North Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and Industry Expansion Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about the solutions NCMEP offers, go to www.ncmep.org. Want to listen to previous Clocking In podcasts? Go to ncmep.org/clockingin.